This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
What's going on, everybody? We're rocking and rolling on a Tuesday edition of Money Moves. VSiN, the sports betting network, Sirius XM channel 158. He's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Stormy Buonantony. Big next 2 hours on tap, especially after what went down last night. Plenty of college football, plenty of NFL. Week 1 is upon us. So let's set the table with all we have to come with the rundown.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is the Rundown.
So with week 1 of the NFL kicking off on Thursday, JVT, today and throughout the week, we're going to continue to look at these lines a handful of different ways. Yes, for straight bets, we'll cover some Circa Survivor discussion now that we've narrowed our focus. But one of my personal favorite things to do in the NFL season is teasers, and we're going to take a look at some of the options this week.
Yeah, long teasers early on, I think, can be pretty chaotic. Last year, there was a stretch where I was getting my face kicked in playing these. You have the added challenge now of prices for teasers being higher than ever. I am an ageist, fully ageist, okay? And I will say that with all of my chest.
At least you're honest.
Yes, I feel like it's one of the better ists to be. But I will say, the one thing that I envy more than anything is when these old guys tell me how teasers used to be even money back in the day. Very incredible. But nowadays, we're talking about $1.35 at some spots, not so much.
Meanwhile, some of you, our newer audience, might not even know what a teaser is. So we will explain that fully. We'll get into the nitty-gritty. And it can be profitable, though. There's a handful, especially this week with spreads, a lot of numbers that are on that 2.5 in terms of underdogs and stuff. So we'll get into that. Also, what's on the marquee? Getting into the college football slate. While we don't have a trio of top 10 matchups like we had this past weekend, we do have some interesting games. The big dog of the week being Michigan at Oklahoma. And we talked about some of those early line moves yesterday. Sooners opened 4.5-point favorites, got out to 5.5, 6 already some places here on a Tuesday.
Yep, can't wait to talk about it. It's always good to remember some of these opening lines from the summer game of the year lines. So if you want to talk about an upgrade, Oklahoma originally in the South Point game of the year lines a 3-point favorite. So now we're as high as that 6.5 as we discussed yesterday. I don't know, man. Seems like a lot for 1 week and one data point.
Yep.
We'll talk about it.
We'll give our thoughts on that game and a whole bunch of them. We'll also get the thoughts from John McKechnie, Rotowire college football and NFL writer. But to stick with college football off the top here, our headline, the hoodie gets humbled on the rundown. Just when I thought no one could have a worse opening week than Kalen DeBoer, Bill Belichick comes out here and says, hold my beer. A 48-14 home loss to TCU for Belichick in his college football coaching debut at North Carolina. And it looked like they were off to a great start. Score on the opening drive. They're off and running. Only scored 7 more points the rest of the day.
I mean, for those who don't know, it shows the strength of what scripted drives can be, right? I mean,
absolutely.
We've seen a couple of times throughout these first couple of weeks of the college football season. The one that comes to mind for me is Fresno State, right? Fresno comes out, scripted drive, goes right down, scores against Kansas, does absolutely nothing the rest of the way. Same thing here with North Carolina. Once you get off script, everything changes. And I don't want to overreact. I don't think anybody does want to overreact from one performance, but it's an abhorrent performance at home. And I can't help but at least harken back to what was a very noisy offseason for Belichick. Not focusing on all of the important things. Let's face it, building a team and a program around a lot of your buddies and a lot of people that it seemed like you were getting jobs, especially setting it up for your kid to take over once you're done. And you come out and you do that? I don't know, man. Like that to me is, I don't mind people dancing on the grave, but it's also one of those things where it's like, dude, did you really take it that seriously this offseason? Because I have a lot of data points that would say you didn't.
Well, and the more now, and obviously hindsight's 2020, but the more you look back to and think about the 70 new people that were brought into this program from a personnel standpoint, half of them coming in spring ball, including their quarterback. Like, how did the quarterback play get better when Gio Lopez actually sat down later on in the game? So there's a lot of layers to this thing. I think that for North Carolina, things will get better as the season goes on. Like, the fundamentals weren't even there. And I think that was one of the big takeaways for me that, yesterday I told you I had the under in this game, and I really fully expected at least the defense to play well and play with fundamentals, and we didn't see that. And I mentioned on a numbers game earlier today on VSiN as well, how much did we hear from Bill Belichick for years and years and years about the middle eight and the importance of the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. They got dogged there with the pick six. They end up then first play out the gates in the second half is that long rushing touchdown for TCU. So the most important, like, critical things that he talks about and he preached so much as an NFL coach, we did not see at all on the field yesterday.
No, and we shouldn't make it all about North Carolina. I think, to me, now that we're officially done with week one, if we're going to come out of that game especially and spin it forward, is coming into the season, we talked a lot about some of these teams at the top of the Big 12. The reality might be, what if the two best teams are, I don't know, Utah and Texas, or TCU? Seriously, like, they looked really good. Hoover looked very solid, I should say, when you looked at his body of work from yesterday. We'll see if that actually means something as we move forward. Maybe North Carolina is just going to be that bad. Couldn't help but also think about our conversation yesterday of, that North Carolina game on the Cal schedule doesn't look that bad anymore. So, you think about all 100%. The things, right, all the trickle effects from a game like that yesterday. You don't want to react too much, but when you look at the grand scheme of everything that comes out of a performance like that, it does get the wheels turning as to how we're going to do this thing in terms of maybe betting some futures, looking ahead to certain things like you mentioned, looking at like a Cal win total moving forward. Does that increase the probability of this team going over their win total if North Carolina is now this weak point on the schedule? They play host to them, correct? They're not going to North Carolina. Correct. So all these little things I was thinking about a little bit more, and wouldn't we love it if it was a Utah-TCU Big 12 championship game?
So I just pulled up those odds for the conference right now. Utah is your standalone favorite, plus 450.
Damn right.
Texas Tech 5-1, Iowa State 6-1, Arizona State 6-1 as well. TCU plus 850. So if you want to, they're still, even after that performance, sixth on the board.
And this goes back to, there's so much coming out of the weekend. You mentioned Texas Tech. Guess who hurt his knee over the weekend? Baron Morton. Yep. So there's so many different things that you look at here that we can't really touch on. But I think coming out of that to me is, all right, how do we spin this forward? What's some of the things that we should think about? What are some of the things we should write down as potential opportunities? And I couldn't help but think about, like, how wide open the Big 12 is, what TCU could be, and then going back to our boy JSK and how good this could be for Cal potentially too, if North Carolina is going to be ass, which is what they looked like yesterday.
The one thing I will say about TCU is we're going to find out real quick how real this is, because while they do have Abilene Christian coming up, they have a bye, and then they have Abilene Christian. Then they have SMU at home. They go to Arizona State, Colorado, and then they're at Kansas State, and then face Baylor. So that is a stretch of games that, if they are as good as they looked yesterday, could be awesome for them, beating ranked opponents and the like, but otherwise we'll get a good barometer of who they really are.
Yeah, and Hoover just looks improved. He's improved each of his 2 years, so we'll see if that's going to be the case. Being in that same system, sticking around, that is worth something, I think, as we saw a little bit during the week of college football, this first week at least.
Yeah, 27-36, 284 yards, 2 touchdowns, did have the 1 pick. For North Carolina, the 48 points that they allowed were the most any Bill Belichick team has ever allowed in his career. That didn't happen in any of the 511 NFL games that he coached in his career. It's also the most points allowed in a season opener in North Carolina history, and the 41 consecutive points that they went without scoring, the most consecutive points allowed by a Bill Belichick-led team as well. So
can we? I
know it's college, but just worth noting.
It's
also, can we get the balloons out of the press conference room?
I heard about that. I didn't see it, but I heard about that.
Dude, it looked like a baby shower.
I'm telling
you, man. They're having a boy.
And you know what? I will say, and it's kind of annoying, and I'm actually disappointed in myself as a primary Bill Belichick hater for what he has done to the Indianapolis Colts over the years. Just all this nonsense, and I thought it was put out there by a lot of people. Did you see the pre-game depth chart that the North Carolina released? With nothing on it. Enough with the arrogance, dude. Like, this is a whole new thing. The last few years, you have, might be strong, but I will use the term, failed at this job. You have not been a good head coach. You've absolutely failed as being an evaluator of talent, as we have seen with your most recent draft classes in New England. I think it was the 2022 draft class we officially have for New England. None of them are on the roster anymore. 2022 for the New England Patriots. This has been, at times, an exercise of arrogance for Belichick, and you hope something like this locks in, but at least him and his girlfriend trademarked Gold Digger 2 weeks before the season started. And then you show up like this. Also,
everything this offseason was off the field.
Yes, of course, it was awful. By the way, I loved the jokes throughout. As many mentioned, 41-7 doesn't seem like that big of a gap to Belichick and his girlfriend. Things like that, absolutely tremendous.
The TCU social media account as well, if you haven't gone to look at it, just banger after banger after banger. Good for them. They're in midseason form. That's a good transition to the NFL, though, because we did have a notable injury update for Thursday Night Football. The Eagles laying 8.5 points against the Cowboys. Left guard Landon Dickerson, you'll remember he had a meniscus cleanup surgery a couple weeks ago. Well, he missed yesterday's practice with a new injury, was listed as a did not practice with a back. Are just back issues going around this season? What's going on?
I don't have one, thankfully. I also thought you were going to talk about the big news, which was Alex Sarr is out for the rest of Eurobasket. I know you were wondering if that was going to be the case. Was a calf
Why are you
injury.
the way that you are?
But no, I will say this is interesting for many different reasons, including the fact that, of course, the game is around the corner, and we got to 8.5 in multiple spots, including Circa. Guard is not going to move a line by any stretch, but still, having a backup guard in that spot in a big situation where you're laying a big number, that is definitely worth noting here, and especially for the big picture, like you mentioned, back. Now knee, getting up there potentially. If this is just going to continue to be a nagging issue for him as we move forward, just these different ailments that he has to work with.
They did get a couple names off the injury report as well, though, which is worth noting. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Keely Ringo all missed time during camp with injuries but are completely off the report. On the Cowboys side, Trayvon Diggs was a full participant again yesterday, said, quote, Thursday may be looking good with the way he was feeling, and their left tackle, Tyler Guyton, back to a full participant as well.
Yeah, the only notable, the only guy that didn't participate for the Cowboys, Perrion Winfrey, one of the defensive tackles. So we'll see if that even matters. But hey, it's worth noting, too, you did just acquire a defensive tackle, like a high-end one. We know Micah Parsons isn't there, but if you're soft up the middle.
Okay, on the way out, let's throw that tweet up here from TCU football. So Deadspin put the picture of Bill Belichick out and said, babe, wake up. Bill Belichick coaches college football today. TCU said, babe, go back to sleep.
That's right.
Carolina football also clipped out about the program coming up on Hulu. Excited to showcase our program on Hulu. TCU said, when does episode 1 come out? Look at you go. Okay, we got to take our first time out of the day. More college football coming up, diving into some of the marquee games of week 2. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Money Moves, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We're live from downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. Going to dive into some week 2 college football lines. And I mentioned off the top of the show, this is not the same. Like last week, we had an unbelievable run of just marquee game after marquee game. 3 top 10 teams going at, like, it was a blast. We've got Michigan, Oklahoma as our headliner this week. And
okay, all right.
What?
Hey, listen, I will admit I was half listening to you, and when you said it was a blast, I thought you were referencing last night, because I was going to be like, I turned that ish off very quickly.
Last night was not a blast, especially for somebody who bet the under. I said last week was a blast. Because you didn't think, like, we had games from Thursday through yesterday, every single day, a lot of marquee brands and teams and standalone spots. It was great. This week, interesting games, but not quite okay, I'm trying my best.
They're
here.
all great, all right? Just like you have to see the beauty in everything. You got to be positive, okay?
Okay.
They're all fantastic.
All right. Well, we're starting with Michigan, Oklahoma, because it's number 14 versus number 18. We saw the true freshman Bryce Underwood last week make his debut. Solid performance against New Mexico, but first real road hostile environment that you're doing. We talked about the line move. You said 3.5 at open back when these Game of the Year lines came out.
Yep.
Flat 3. We've seen as high as 6.5. There has been some buyback looking at the market right now, mostly 5.5s out there, which I think is about right. Like, I agree with that initial line move, and then maybe if you get to 6.5 and you're headed to 7, does that seem like a bit much?
It does. So here's the thing. It does to me only because we're still talking only about one data point, right? One thing that we know about these teams, and we still don't really know that much. You can look at Michigan and say, I don't know, like it was a 17-10 game somewhat later than we expected. What the hell was that? And you let New Mexico drive on you kind of in that game, and it was a somewhat efficient drive for the most part, and then they hit them with a sick touchdown pass on 4th and goal. There was a lot that you could dislike, but I could make the argument that, hey, Bryce Underwood in the game in which Michigan didn't want to show anything, completed 67% of his passes for 8.1 yards per attempt. PFF gave him a passing grade of 77.7. He didn't commit a turnover-worthy play. He played within the structure of what they wanted. And I think there is something to be said of we talked about Iowa yesterday, and the fact that Iowa wasn't showing anything but looked awful and couldn't throw the ball downfield, where Michigan didn't show anything and maybe found themselves like, oh, hey, maybe this New Mexico team's a little bit scrappy. Let's actually take this seriously. And then they pull away late. That, to me, is where I kind of want to pump the brakes and go, I still think these two teams are closer to equal to one another than overreacting and, downgrading Michigan or upgrading Oklahoma from one game for each of them. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely fair. And should we be upgrading Oklahoma that much, given the opponent being Illinois State? Like, yes, I get that John Mateer in moments looked like Uncle Rico saying I can throw the ball over the mountains with nearly 400 yards and 4 total touchdowns, but a Michigan defense is going to be very different, right?
Yep.
And so we'll see what that looks like. The big question about John Mateer coming into this year in general is, what is he going to look like against elevated competition? We know that he can be awesome against lower level competition, but now that you're going to be facing an SEC schedule, and in this case a Big Ten opponent and a Big Ten defense, what's that going to look like in this case? But philosophically, I would say, like, nice to see, if you're an Oklahoma fan at least, that you get off to, what was it? Did they have the worst PFF grade in Power 4 offensively of any team last year, I think?
I think it was one of those.
So it was very bad. Okay, so at least to start the season on that note with Mateer and obviously his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, also coming over with him from Wazoo, that had to be, at least I would think, a nice feeling.
Okay, be a little nicer. Kent State, Kennesaw State, Southern Miss, and Akron.
I said Power 4.
Oh, okay, you're right. Yeah, you did.
Damn.
You got it. Yep.
Let's
You
go.
are correct.
Let's go.
5th worst in the country.
Jeez.
Northwestern just ahead of them. So anyway, I would like to play Michigan here, I think. I don't want to react that strongly to something like this. And I will say, put this in a different perspective. So Oklahoma right now, okay, so 5.5 across the board. There's a 6 out there. Let's just ballpark this and say general home field in college, especially floating around 3 points. You know, would you really say that in Michigan you'd be comfortable with Michigan just being a pick against Oklahoma?
No.
I don't think I would. So.
And Venables probably going to throw a little more at the true freshman quarterback too. So there is that element of it. But yeah, I agree. I thought that the 6.5 was too many, so the buyback is appropriate, and I'm curious to see where this line is going to go from here. The other interesting matchup in my mind this weekend is Baylor and SMU, 3-point spread there. Baylor, fresh off the loss to Auburn at home, now has to go visit the number 16 ranked team in the country. Total 65.5, so odds makers have this one as kind of a shootout. Biggest takeaways from Baylor-Auburn. Defensively, they gave up more than 300 freaking yards on the ground. Even Rhett Lashley, as you look at your offense, you're like, okay, well, that's not necessarily what we do. You have to test the waters as much as humanly possible to see if you can just run the ball down their throat as much as possible until they prove you can stop you, right?
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was talking with a couple of people about this on Sunday, and one of the things that I brought up was, hey, man, Auburn looking pretty good. And the rebuttal to me was, well, can you throw the ball? And my response was, they didn't have to.
They didn't need to.
So I don't think that was not asking Jackson Arnold to throw the ball. And again, the throws were incredible. But I don't think that's a symptom of we don't trust Jackson Arnold. I think that's a symptom of, guys, they can't stop this at all. Let's keep going. And then let's just keep doing
good.
that.
Which, honestly, say what you want about Hugh Freeze, that's good coaching, right? Like, if they can't stop this, I'm just going to keep running the ball down their throat.
Yep. So that I think is a pretty big takeaway as you're spinning this forward for both of these teams. But specifically, as you're talking about for Baylor, it's a game that I don't really have a good read on. I am somewhat surprised that the market went from 4 under that key number and just pushed this down to 2.5 with relative ease. This is a week after the market showed some love for Baylor against Auburn and then was burned by it. So there is some sort of sharp opinion that likes this Baylor team. Last week it didn't come through, and this week, like you're saying, can you trust that they're going to shore up defensively when they couldn't do it at home against Auburn?
Didn't love it.
Yeah.
Didn't love it. Offensively, they did move the ball well.
Sure.
So I think the total probably makes a little bit of sense. For SMU week 1, it's hard to, what can you glean from East Texas A&M? I don't really know.
Everything. No, but I will say, too, I throw out special teams as well. Remember, they gave up the kickoff return for a touchdown that I think is somewhat worrisome. I don't know if that's a symptom of this team being awful as on special teams as move forward. But special teams and defense really let them down. And are those things getting better when you're going on the road?
I threw a handful of games in the rundown, but what other games caught your eye?
Okay, so again, there's a lot of big spreads, so you really have to kind of dig around and see what's going on. I think, did you put in Illinois Duke?
I did, yes.
So this is the one that I agreed that I thought was worth discussing. Illinois laying a full 3, total of 50.5. 2.5 at Superbook, which is one of a few shops that has altered their juice for the season. Superbook, you're laying only 109. So if you want to go out there and get a cent off in playing these sides. But I saw a lot of people expressing surprise at this line, and I don't know if that was because they thought it was too short or that Illinois should not be favored on the road. But not that impressive of a performance from Duke. A lot of late touchdowns in the first week to make that score look a little bit more lopsided. And I respect Duke as a whole, as a football program. But if this is going to start to get to 2.5, I would find myself tempted by Illinois here in this spot to go in there and I think be able to cover this number.
I honestly was surprised because I saw the threes there. I was surprised that we're back at the 2.5 because I thought that the money would come all over Illinois, just based on like a lot of the preseason talk, right? This is a team that is going to be the Indiana of last year. Everybody was doubting them. They're going to run through their schedule. They're going to beat up on people. Brett Bielema's got this. Like that was the narrative that I heard so much of coming in that I thought they were going to get hammered here to start.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I'll be curious to see, again, the 2.5 out there, but market wide still 3. So we'll see if there is enough out there. Or maybe the Superbook, which is at 2.5 right now, is throwing out some feelers to see if that's going to happen, if someone's going to come in and lay that 2.5 or whatever it is. But I think it's a fair number. I'm very curious to see what Duke has in the second game. Maybe they just get caught with their pants down again in another matchup where they feel like they didn't have to show anything.
Yeah.
But it's always worrisome when you get in those spots and you still don't look like the clearly dominant team.
That the quarterback situation for Duke coming out of last year is still very unique, and obviously it's fresh in my mind because I just had Malik Murphy with Oregon State this past week. But like he set a Duke single season touchdowns record last year, led Duke to 9 wins, and then they shoved him out of the way because they wanted to bring in Darian Mensah, and they paid him all this money. So clearly they are big believers in the transfer to Tulane and what that can look like. 2.5 again, the spread here, total 50.5. And any thought on the total initially?
Initially, I would be under. If I like Illinois, would feel like there's going to be a line of control line of scrimmage, control time of possession, be able to run the ball and sit on this thing. And again, like Mensah, you mentioned it, the PFF numbers are actually really good for him in the game. But again, most of that damage coming in that fourth quarter against Elon. So not anything you really love.
A good reminder, too, with college football and the NFL about to kick off here, the guides are still very, very worthwhile in this early season as you're trying to get to know a handful of teams and what they might be made out of. Available right now, vsin.com/subscribe in addition to the guides. And we have that NFL updated guide that's out now as well. You get all of the access to everything we do over at vsin.com. That's the daily best bets from our experts, hosts, and guests. DraftKings and Circa betting splits updated in real time, 24/7 video and replays on the VSiN Watch app. Advanced analytics and betting tools on vsin.com. You can get started for just $9.99 or save 50% with an annual plan right now. vsin.com/subscribe. Again, vsin.com/subscribe. And this Illinois Duke game actually one that our next guest had on his radar as well. John McKechnie joining us next, Rotowire analyst. Next here on Money Moves, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Money Moves, we're keeping the college football conversation going as we welcome you back to the show. He's JVT, I'm Stormy Buonantony. John McKechnie joining us now here on the Progressive Guest Line. Rotowire, college football, NFL analyst. You can follow him on X at Johns_tailgate. And before we get into some of the games upcoming here in week 2, we're still reacting and talking over what transpired last night on the field in Bill Belichick's head coaching debut against TCU. Did you take more away from how rough the first game was for the Tar Heels or how good TCU looked? Like, where did you end on the spectrum?
Well, I think Sonny Dykes said it well, where it's essentially TCU they were not part of the conversation going into that game. Everything was centered around Chapel Bill and, how's UNC going to look? You got Gio Lopez, you got all these transfers coming in, but Bill is, one of the greatest, if not the best, football mind of all time, one of the greatest coaches of all time, period. How's this going to go in year one and in the first week? And boy, what a whipsaw, right? I mean, you get that rocket hot 83-yard touchdown drive off the rip, and you're like, wait a second here. Like Bill is just, playing at a different level than everybody else. And, maybe the rest of the ACC is on notice, especially with what transpired elsewhere in the ACC this weekend. And then it was very reminiscent of the scene in The Simpsons where Nelson Muntz intercepts a pass from or a note from Milhouse, and then the next clip is just Milhouse getting wheeled out into an ambulance. Like, TCU just absolutely took UNC to the woodshed the rest of the game. So TCU's for real. Like, they're very much alive in the Big 12, and I think this is just. I think we're looking at a potential disaster season for North Carolina, and I know it's just 1 week and everything, but. Is there anything that really makes you feel good if you're a North Carolina fan? I don't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so either, but still plenty of time. So let's discuss one of their conference opponents. Duke gets a pretty big matchup here at home against Illinois this weekend. 2.5 is the lowest number out here in town. Threes, though, painted across the board with a total of 50.5. What do we see here?
Right. So this is one that I've had circled. It's oftentimes in college football, week 2, after all the pomp and circumstance of week 1, that can be a slate that gets a little bit overlooked. So you have to squint a little bit to find the really good matchups this weekend. But I think Duke and Illinois absolutely qualify. I think we have 2 really good quarterbacks in this one. Luke Altmaier for Illinois, longtime starter for them, and Darian Mensah, new starter there for Duke, coming over from Tulane and getting a hefty sum to go to Duke for his troubles. So this is a huge matchup. I think that Illinois is a team that has gotten a ton of hype that this offseason is kind of like potentially that next Indiana because the schedule sets up so well for them in conference play. But in order to kind of live up to that, they needed to take care of business against Duke, and we see a pretty short number here. I mean, that's a lot of respect for this Duke team here. I know that Duke didn't look as sharp maybe as Illinois did in week 1, although they played relatively equal FCS, not very good opponents. But, Duke took a little while to pull away, whereas Illinois was in control the whole game. I think ultimately I give the quarterback lean to Duke. However, I do think that the trenches do favor Illinois in this one. I think that that's going to kind of tell the story of this particular game. So right now, where I can get it under a field goal, I do like Illinois minus 2.5.
Rotowire analyst John McKechnie joining us here on the Progressive Guest Line. One game we haven't had a chance to talk about today, Oklahoma State, Oregon, and I know that's a game that's on your radar. The Ducks at home laying 28 points in this spot, and we've seen a lot of the headlines over the last 24 hours of Mike Gundy on the radio talking about how much the Ducks spent for their roster. What did you take away as you broke down these two teams going at it on Saturday?
Yeah, so this one's really interesting, and the juice is definitely amped up with the coaches taking barbs at each other. And I think, Gundy, it's okay to point out that these teams are spending a lot of money, but it's like, it's Oregon, it's Phil Knight, it's Dan Lanning. Like, or what are they not supposed? Are they supposed to mom and pop shop this thing? Like, no, like they're going to absolutely like empty the coffers as they absolutely should. And Oklahoma State, I mean, like you should not be able to cry poor if you're Oklahoma State. Like if OK State was, some Sun Belt team, maybe I hear it a little bit more. But Lanning kind of clapped back at him and said that that's a baked-in excuse for when you lose, is your program just doesn't spend enough money. So we see this huge number here, right? We see 28.5, and I think that Oregon is obviously the superior side here. 28.5 is a lot, though. And I do think that, Oklahoma State, it's fair to point out that Haas Haney broke his foot last week, and he's going to be out for a little bit, their starting quarterback. But it took him a while to win the quarterback competition there at Oklahoma State. So Zane Flores, I think, is able to operate this offense enough. And I'm just going to kind of hold my nose and take the points here. I think that Oregon, again, superior side here, but 28.5 is just too much for two Power 4 teams squaring off. Although, as I say this, I do get a little bit concerned given that there's a little bit of heat in this matchup between Lanning and Gundy, that maybe Lanning just kind of lays it on there in the second half and we get the backdoor cover for the Ducks. But as it stands, too many points. I'm taking the Pokes.
All right, John, what about Baylor and SMU? We were just talking about this, the market for a second straight week backing the Bears here. Are they going to get it right this time?
I had some concerns about Baylor coming into the season based on the schedule. I thought that the Auburn game, that them being underdogs at home against an Auburn team that was not good last year, it's like, what's going on here? Baylor kind of a buzzy team in the Big 12, and looking out further in the schedule, you get this SMU game, and then in a couple weeks, you get Arizona State as well. So I kind of postulated over the summer, I think that there's a better chance that Baylor starts the year 1-3 than they do 3-1. And I think that this is another troublesome spot for Baylor. I thought that the defense got pushed around a good bit. I know that Kevin Jennings more of a pocket passer type than Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold was running all over this Baylor defense last week. I don't think SMU can bully them the same way on the ground, but I still have some concerns about this Baylor team. And Baylor couldn't get their ground game going whatsoever, and that was supposed to be kind of like this really big complementary piece to Sawyer Robertson in this passing game here. So I like SMU at home here. I think that Baylor is a little bit rattled. You got to be after the way that last weekend went against Auburn. SMU, maybe their trajectory not as high as what we saw a year ago where they ended up making the college football playoff, but still a very solid team. Returning quarterback in Kevin Jennings, a lot of talent there, really good, kind of offensive system. I like the Ponies here, and I could see them, winning this, like covering this one. Dangerous statement here, but I could see them covering this one pretty easily. I would jump on this while it's still 2.5.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about how much Baylor was just gashed by the run in that game, as you alluded to. I just think Rhett Lashley, even if that's not necessarily Kevin Jennings' game, you have to try, at least just see what you guys can do against that run defense. Let's shift gears here to the NFL. Last couple minutes, there are a few interesting divisional games to kick off week 1. Of course, we'll see right out the gates Thursday night football, Eagles and Dallas going head-to-head to kick us off. But you're looking at a slightly deeper cut in the NFC South, the Bucs and Falcons going head-to-head. What caught your eye?
I like the Falcons in this particular setup, and I think more than anything, that total strikes me as a bit on the low side as well. So I think that we're going to get points aplenty in this one. I am a big believer that Michael Penix is going to elevate this offense. I think that the skill talent that Atlanta has is really, really strong. I think that Drake London is going to, if you're a fantasy player or anything, he's going to have one of the best fantasy seasons in the NFL this year. I'm going to kind of remain neutral on Kyle Pitts. We've seen it all from him at this point, but Bijan also one of the most electrifying playmakers. So I think that Atlanta's going to kind of be able to hold up their end of the bargain as far as the scoring goes, and I think we can be pretty confident that Tampa Bay is going to be able to answer as well. So, Falcons being home dogs at 2.5. I side with the Falcons in this particular spot, but I think more than anything, my strongest lean from this one is going to be the over here. I really do think that the defenses are going to be kind of playing up from their heels on this one.
Yeah, total there set at 47.5. John, awesome breakdown. We appreciate your time today. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Much appreciated, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
John McKechnie, check out all the work again over at Rotowire. You can follow him on X at Johns_tailgate. Yeah, I know we're going to talk Survivor next segment. That's not a game that was on my radar for week 1 from a Survivor standpoint, but it is one of those more interesting under the radar games I don't think a lot of people have talked about leading up to the weekend.
Yeah, not too much. We've covered, especially with the Caleb McGarry injury that we discussed when it came down, and the fact that I love me some Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So.
Yeah, it's more Bucks big picture than week 1, though, for you, I thought.
Yeah, although I still look. I mean, I'm gonna say something groundbreaking here. We don't know that much about Michael Penix yet, even though that the small sample size of returns was above average what we saw to this point. But down a blindside protector against this team that I think can at least make your own defense work. We will see if that's going to be the case.
Okay, we've got to step aside here, but when we come back, as I mentioned, we're gonna take a deep dive into Circa Survivor week 1 for our contest corner. You have made a point of saying a team that you really like. I have one that I really like, but if push comes to shove, I don't know who's going to get final say in this, but we shall see. Flip a coin, producer Brian Ortega says. I don't know.
It's only for week 1. It's only $1,000 decision, and then as we
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Okay, we will be right back as we wrap up hour 1 here on Money Moves next.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Need a proxy? You can join the world's biggest football contest with one trip to Vegas anytime before the NFL season starts. Trusted by thousands of players over the last 9 seasons, Winner's Circle proxy service has helped clients win over $9.3 million the last 2 seasons. Learn more about using a trusted proxy service at winnercircleproxy.com/vsin. That's winnercircleproxy.com/VSIN. And that is the perfect segue to our contest corner as we welcome you back here to Money Moves on a Tuesday. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. We will be doing a Money Moves entry in, or I guess we've already signed up for it, in Circa Millions, which is the 5 ATS picks every week. There are quarterly prizes for that one, as well as Circa Survivor, which is what we're going to get into here. All you need to do, as they say, JVT, just pick a winner. Just pick one team to win straight up each week. You can't have a repeat team, yet it is so much harder than it looks. And the numbers are adding up as we look behind us as well.
You blind?
Yes.
4,361 in the million.
You have to say it on a microphone because I can't hear you. What?
So the whole point was that you were going to repeat the numbers that I was just speaking.
I couldn't hear you, though. My earpieces are noise
14,000. I'll turn around here. 14,059 in Survivor, 4,361 in the million, and 43 in Grandissimo.
43. We're up to in Grandissimo.
Correct.
Wow. But yes, I am blind.
I'm 2 of them.
I was actually saying this yesterday. I get my contact prescription re-upped every year. I follow the rules, but I swear it's just bad. I don't know what's wrong with me.
My mother's legally blind, so.
I might be on that trajectory, not going well. But so we got some competition ahead of us, needless to say. But the prize money just keeps adding up, and we would like to be a part of it. So let's go. First blush, the team for week 1 that we are the most adamant about being the pick for Survivor on 3. Let's say it at the same time, okay? 1, 2, 3, Cardinals.
Arizona or Denver.
That's 2 answers. You're just
It is, though, because. No, but here's the thing.
So that seems like we're like-minded.
Sure,
so that's a good start.
You would if you told me right now I lost with either one of those, I would feel the most comfortable that those were the selections.
Okay.
So, and I think Denver, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, or was it last week, if I were to ask you to construct one of the worst situations you could for week 1, it would probably be a rookie quarterback going on the road in Denver and facing one of the best defenses in the NFL. Having said that, the Cardinals are not a team that down the list there are many opportunities for. This is a little bit further down, but at the very least you can make the argument, hey, save Denver for, I think it's week 7 against the New York Giants. If you believe that the Giants are going to be that bad, then you can at the very least say, we'll save Denver for that matchup against the New York Giants. When you look at the Cardinals schedule, the next best spot is probably next week when they're projected to be somewhere around 4.5-point favorites
against the Carolina Panthers team,
who we both like.
That we like, yes.
Correct. So I think that there are not as many opportunities to use Arizona as there are going to be for Denver. Really just like one more solid spot, and then we'll see what happens to these teams, injuries, all that kind of stuff, who gets downgraded, who doesn't, where I'm comfortable with either one. If you say right now, I want Arizona, I'd be like, cool. If you say right now, you know what, I actually think we should use Denver, I'd be like, cool. I'm comfortable with using either one of those. In week 1, I think that's one of the 2 choices to make. I would throw out the caveat where, look, Cincinnati's not going to have that many spots either. Yeah. And they're on the road against a divisional opponent. And I would put this out there, too. So our friends over at Pool Genius, and Gil and them covered this. They did a really good job putting out these numbers with our friends over there. So the Survivor myth, as they say, the division versus non-division games, if you look at some of these, especially because a lot of people say, well, you don't want to use division games in Survivor. If you're talking about a spread from 5 to 6.5, divisional games, you are 241 and 105. So, again, you're winning at a 69% clip in divisional games, in which the favorite is 5 to 6.5 points. That's exactly what we're talking about right now for the Cleveland Browns, Cincinnati Bengals. So I would throw out there that that's something you could do. But again, even then, if you really like trends, non-divisional matchups in a spread range of 5 to 6.5, 430, 195, and 368% at a higher or a larger sample size. Excuse me. So, long story short, I'm fine with either one. If you really want the Cardinals.
So speaking of those numbers that Gail put out, he mentioned earlier, and I thought it was interesting because he's probably correct in this, that picking the Bengals in week 1 would actually be a pretty contrarian play.
I think so, too.
And especially based on everything that happened last year, right? They are the most selected pick by a mile, week 1 against the Patriots, do everybody dirty. And then a couple weeks later, when everybody's all over them again, they're like, okay, yeah, you lost week 1, but there's no way you're going to do that again. Inevitably, of course, they they fell flat once again.
Yep.
So the Bengals might feel like a risky pick on the surface, and so some people probably want to avoid them, don't want to get hurt again. But I feel confident they're going to win that game. I'm not scared about that. Where I feel when I look at that game in general was the conversation we were having off air yesterday was just like the total to me. I think the Bengals defense is still going to be brutal, and everybody keeps on yelling at me, yeah, but Joe Flacco is brutal, which I agree. But it's like the lesser of two evils in my mind at this point. So I don't know.
Do you think Joe Flacco is the lesser of two evils? Is that what you're saying?
It's like pick your poison type of a thing. Like, what is the lesser of two evils in your opinion?
Hand me the needle with the Bengals every time.
At least they have Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
Thank
and
God
at least
that
we have
worked
Joe
out.
Burrow in our corner as opposed to
but
Joe Flacco.
I think that the Bengals actually do make a ton of sense as an option.
Because to your point too, like anything on social media you see involving Survivor and Cincinnati, every response is no
Can't
shot,
do it.
can't do it.
Can't do it.
I mean, why not? Again, as I keep referring, it is the LSU symptom. It is a team that is just. It is not to say that none of these teams are focused on their week one opponents. This is a team that desperately does not want to start 0-1.
And their schedule, too, is one that's a little bit tricky, especially with how their defense has performed, because they do have Jacksonville in week 2 and Minnesota and Denver and the Lions and the Packers. And the list goes on with the opponents that they have on their list. Like, when's the next time you might want to take them on? The Giants, October 26th? The Jets, October 26th? Yep. Is that the other spot? Because largely that schedule is pretty challenging.
Yes, I know. I'm with you, too. It's for Cincinnati, and it's a great point by Adam Burke, who's brought it up with us when he has talked about it when he's come in here. You do have to use, if you're going to win, you're going to use 20 of 32 teams. So you do have to find some of these spots where you're going to use teams that aren't as sexy. And when you look at a team like Cincinnati, if you really have the trepidation that you do for this team, look at the schedule and find a different situation where you would feel as confident as taking on Cleveland. They don't take on Cleveland again until week 18. So maybe you save Cincinnati for week 18. We'll see if that's actually something worth it. Week 12 against New England could potentially be a spot where you look at, or as you mentioned, week 8 against the New York Jets. Or if you're really down on them, and by the time we get to week 9, they are falling apart, maybe home against Chicago week 9. But I think that would have to take some really big failures and injuries on Chicago's part for Cincinnati to be a viable survivor option when you're taking on Chicago.
So to go back to why I like Arizona in this spot, in addition to just the lack of being able to use them potentially later on, is just in general, like I have always been so pro Kyler Murray early, not late. And I do think that this Cardinals team can be improved. I like Jonathan Gannon and what he's doing with the defense. I am pro Kyler Murray early in the season, but even last year, when it wasn't necessarily from an injury standpoint that derailed his season the back end of the year, it was a turnover problem that creeped up on him from December on. So if I am backing the Cardinals in any way, shape, or form, I want to do it early in the season. And if Spencer Rattler is going to beat me on the other side, then I deserve to lose. Sure. I do not like anything about this New Orleans Saints team this year. You know I bet them to be the lowest scoring team in the NFL. So if I'm very anti-Saints and I like the Cardinals early on in the season, I don't think there's going to be much opportunity to buy in on them elsewhere. That's kind of my big sell. It's like, I like the weapons they have on offense. Kyler Murray's going to be healthy. He's going to be good to go. This Saints team, there's nothing I can say good about them in my mind right now.
Yeah.
But then is that like digging myself into the same hole as we had last year when we talked about the Bengals?
You got to eliminate last year. Who cares? It happened. Now we move on. This is 2025.
Your Broncos argument is really good, though, most notably, and just to rehash, because we didn't say it a lot here, but we hammered it last weekend when you talked about being at Mile High and that element of it as well against a rookie quarterback.
I mean, it's one of the situations that you would really buy into if you're talking about, if you're a situational handicapper and you want to find some of these spots where, hey, if there's going to be a lopsided result, where could it be? It could be Tennessee and Denver. I'm very pro Cam Ward. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. We've discussed, I think the Titans could actually be a very good team. But when you look at the situation for Tennessee, walking there, having to play in the thin air against a Denver team that defensively is among the best in the NFL, that is one of those where you're not going to find, as the season progresses, a much better spot.
Okay, so here's what I'll say. Because my father and I have 2 additional Survivor entries, if you want to, if you feel a strong conviction on one of these, but how do we put the nail in this thing? How do we decide?
You like Arizona, and I think Arizona's a fine option. Arizona. You like the Broncos, and I think the Broncos are a fine option. Okay, I really like Arizona, Stormy. I think we should use
Are we
them.
doing it? Are we locking in the Arizona Cardinals, Week 1 Survivor?
Yeah,
You feel good about it?
Yeah.
All right, let's roll.
Think about it for the next couple of days.
Yeah,
Deadline's not until Saturday.
That's true. Let's write that in the sand.
Sure. I like it. Nothing is set in stone.
Nothing is set in stone.
Biggest
until
favorite,
Saturday.
according to Projector, to look at headlines next week is Buffalo against the Jets, but actually the Baltimore Ravens were 12-point favorites against the Cleveland Browns.
Okay. You hear that music, that means we got to stop yapping. But resetting for hour 2 of the program when we come back here on Money Moves, the AP Top 25 in college football is out and some big injuries in Major League Baseball to update, John.